Okay, we're going to go until 1:30, and then we're going to take a break because I have some other hearings I got to take care of, and then we'll reconvene after that. I believe we're in the middle of the direct examination of Mr. Hart. Mr. Ackles, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Hart, I believe I was asking you about some questions about the green tags, but I think I misspoke and said green card maybe several times. You understood my questions being green tagging from the city. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I apologize for that. That was my mistake. Probably just too much information in my head right now. But a green tag at the city, what exactly does that mean when a city comes out and green tags something?
A green tag is one of several colored tags that are issued by an inspector when the builder calls for a certain type of inspection. You can call for electrical inspection or a foundation inspection or a pier inspection or plumbing inspection or whatever type he needs. And the inspector comes out and looks at the building, the house, and determines whether it complies with generally accepted practices. And he basically looks to see if he sees any defects.
And I think you've likened it to a traffic light. What do you mean by that?
Well, if it gets a green tag, that typically means it's okay to proceed with construction. If it's a yellow tag, it means you got to wait and do something else. If it's a red tag, that means stop, don't go any further until the problem is corrected, and call for another inspection.
But a green tag is not the final approval of the project by the city on any aspect of the project. Is that correct?
Typically, that's correct. You want to have all of the inspections.
The city requires a subsequent final on all items. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
You've reviewed the city permit files. Did you see a final on any of the inspections?
I actually went down to the city and asked them specifically what the status of the permit situation was, and they replied that the electrical had a final on it, but none of the other trades had finals.
And what were the other trades?
An objective per se on whatever he heard from the city.
Response?
Well, I'm not. I could ask him in his experience with the city what do they require, but I think the document has been admitted into evidence, and so he's talking about the document and the city's position on the permit file.
Why don't you rephrase it?
Well, what is your experience with the city on whether or not they had finals on any of the trades except electrical?
I did not see any evidence of finals on the documents that we received from the city on the permit file, and they verbally told me that the electrical was the only one that they had final on.
Okay, and what were the other trades that did not have a final inspection on?
Mechanical, the plumbing, the energy, and the building.
And those aspects require, when you say a final, is it a final inspection or is it a CO or is it both in order to have a certificate of occupancy?
You have to get all of the finals before you apply for a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, so you need the order of the order is a green tag, a final inspection, and then a certificate of occupancy. Is that right?
You have to have a green tag on every trade before you can apply for a certificate of occupancy.
But you also have to have a final inspection on every trade before you can get a certificate of occupancy. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Let me ask you to look at Defense Exhibit 108, which was discussed in Mr. El Chami's deposition. Rob, can you put that, please? Defense Exhibit 108 up.
I need to share screen.
Okay.
Now you've looked at this as Defense Exhibit 108. What is this?
Well, it says it's a foundation plan.
Okay, to your knowledge, was it drafted by an engineer?
It says,
Lacks foundation.
Yeah, I guess explain how he would know that.
Okay. Do you know, have you heard of this Drafting Design and Associates, AH Plans and Design, or FC Drafting Design and Associates?
I have, but if I were to answer the judge's question, if it were an engineered plan, it would have a stamp on it by an engineer with his signature and the date that he approved it.
Okay, and also at the bottom right-hand corner, it says, subject to field inspector's approval. Do you see any approval by a field inspector on this document?
I do not.
Okay, so it's clearly not an engineer approved plan, and it's clearly not approved by the field inspector. Is there anything else about this plan that is inconsistent with what's built out there on the Zitoun's property?
This foundation plan appears to match Exhibit 117 in that it has the garage on the south end of the building instead of on the north end of the building as the house is currently constructed.
So this cannot be the foundation plan for the house that was constructed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. If you were going to move the garage and the bedroom and some other rooms in between, would you have to get another foundation plan?
Yes.
If Rob, if I could ask you to turn this on its side and show us what's in that first box on this Defendant's Exhibit 108, so we can look at that, please. It says these plans are intended to provide basic construction information necessary to substantially build this structure. These plans must be verified and checked by the builder, homeowner, and all contractors of this job prior to construction. Builders should obtain complete engineering services, HVAC, and structural before beginning construction of any kind. So it's clear that this is not an engineer's plan, but rather someone drew it up saying you should have an engineer's plan. Is that right?
Yes.
And how do you interpret that language?
It appears to be requiring the use of engineering services that are not evident on this drawing.
Okay. And then, okay, that's all I need on that exhibit. In your rendition of the problems with his house, you mentioned that I believe you said something to the effect that no knowledgeable person identified the proper construction elevation of the house. Would you tell the court about those conclusions you made?
If you stand on the street and look at the house, you see that water will run right down the driveway into the house and fill up inside the house. It will also run down from the front of the lot to the right of the driveway as you're facing the house and fill up the flower bed that's created by the driveway and the front porch and the sidewalk going from the driveway to the front porch. That makes a swimming pool type area. The water fills up in that area higher than the finished floor in the study.
Okay, and I made a mistake. I left Defense Exhibit 108, one question too soon, or two questions too soon. Rob, would you put that back up, please? Do you see any piers on Exhibit 108?
I do not.
If there were going to be piers put into this foundation, should they be put on a foundation plan?
Yes, they would be drawn as circles, and then there would be a detail somewhere in the foundation plans that shows the width, the depth, and the configuration, what soil the pier should be founded in, whether it's straight shaft or a bell, whether it's 12 inches in diameter or 24 inches in diameter, or whatever size. The registered professional engineer should decide with the soil report information that he would need to use to determine the size and spacing of the piers.
And you've seen none of that in this file, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you looked for piers when you went out there on those numerous occasions. Is that correct?
I did look in one corner and I found what appeared to be a pier under one corner of the house.
And that's the only pier you found?
That's the only one that I looked for.
Okay.
But
And
yes, it's the only one I found.
okay, thank you. Now I'm done with that exhibit. You also said that the foundation was placed at an elevation that was approximately 3 feet too low to exit the garage to Maple Springs. Would you tell the court how you reached that conclusion?
Well, we look at the street elevation and look at the house elevation, and the house is approximately 18 inches below. The finished floor of the house is approximately 18 inches below the finished floor of the street, or the finished elevation of the street. So the building code requires that you have a minimum of 12 inches of height above the street plus a 2% fall towards the street, or some other plan that is approved by the building code official that will comply with proper drainage. This house, I don't see a way to make that comply short of major underground piping systems and open drains similar to what you would have in a street, to have an inlet that would bring surplus water away from the house. It's just too low. Also, you find that the city has a note in some of their permit records that the sewer line is 3 feet below the surface of the pavement on the street. If you assume that you want the raw sewage to flow through a piping system to the municipal sewer line, then you've got to take the point that's furthest away from the sewer line in the house. And typically you would have a toilet that would be some distance away. In this case, it's probably 150 to 200 feet away from where the sewer line would be located in the street. And you assume that you have about a 18-inch fall to the bottom of your trap, and then you at the toilet area, and then you drain from that lowest spot towards the city sewer. You typically want to have at least a 1% fall, which would be 1 foot in 100 feet. And if we're 200 feet away from the spot, then that means you've got to have 2 feet of fall and you're starting at roughly 18 inches below. So that's 3.5 feet of fall, and you're starting at another 18 inches below the street. So you're at least 3 feet below what you could have to make the sewage flow to the Maple Springs. And to make it flow off of Maple Springs to Denton Drive, you would have to cross a lot other than the lot that the house is built on. So there would be some surveying involved and approvals involved to try to get access to tie into Denton Drive.
Okay, just to make sure I understood that. You're saying that because the house is 3 feet below street level, there's likely not enough fall left from the lowest point underneath the commode that is at the lowest point to Denton Drive to flow sewage out properly. Is that what you're saying?
Close. I'm saying that the house should be raised 3 feet from what it is to make the sewer flow to Denton Drive. Excuse me, to Maple Springs Drive.
To Maple Springs. I'm sorry, I messed that up. Do you believe this house will have sewage problems in the future?
Well, it's been drained right now to Denton Drive, not to Maple Springs.
Okay.
I have not investigated the sewer line other than seeing that it went across a lot that was not part of this platted lot. So I think that is a major issue that will occur in the future.
So you saying the sewer line that extends to Denton Drive that's being used will cause a problem with the city because it crosses lot lines. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And by the way, you've tried or replatted properties before to merge one or two lots into a single lot, have you not?
Yes,
Or
I
tried-
have.
And how long does that process take? If the city is
Typically,
out?
it would take about 6 to 8 weeks, but with COVID, it might take 12 weeks.
So if we were in 2016 and it's roughly March or April of 2016 to replat the 4 lots on this property into a single lot would have taken about 6 to 8 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. And that's with the city of Dallas, right?
I have not replatted a lot in the city of Dallas, but it's typically the same procedures. I have looked at their required procedures.
Okay. You also mentioned the fireplace pad was pulling away from the rest of the foundation. Could you explain that a little more detail, please?
It appears that the fireplace was forgotten and added later, and they poured the pad for the foundation next to the existing house pad foundation, but it doesn't appear that they tied the fireplace foundation in, because you can see gaps between the house foundation and the fireplace foundation.
And your report, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 90, which is in evidence, shows pictures of all these things we were talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that the roof was never installed over the fireplace and has leaked water into the walls. Would you describe that in more detail, please?
The fireplace is a direct vent fireplace that doesn't have a tall chimney. It goes out through the side or back of the fireplace walls, but it still is required to have a roof on it. And in this particular case, they put the oriented strand board decking on top of the fireplace walls, but they did not put any felt paper or shingles on top of it. So it's just raw oriented strand board decking that is coming apart. It's flaking completely apart, and I'm sure it's leaking water inside the whole fireplace area and is causing damage to that fireplace.
Okay. And then you also mentioned the non-flammable hearth of the fireplace is too shallow. Explain that to the court, please.
Well, the code requires that for a firebox this size, you have a minimum of a 20-inch hearth that is non-combustible. So if you got some kind of fire going with natural wood products in it, when it pops, you'll have little sparks that will come out. And the code officials have found that if you have a 20-inch wide hearth, that will catch the majority of the sparks and you'll have a safe operation. This one has a 12-inch hearth instead of a 20-inch. And then it's got hardwood floors and plywood underneath the hardwood floors. So if a spark jumps out, it catches the floor on fire and burns the house down.
And you consider that, in your opinion, to be a fire hazard, is that right?
I do.
And would you recommend that the Zitouns use that fireplace before it's repaired properly?
The very first time I came out, I told them, do not use this fireplace at all.
Okay. You also talked about in your report the exterior insulation finish system, which is called known as EIFS, also known as artificial stucco, was installed incorrectly. Would you tell the court about that, please?
The manufacturers of virtually all of the artificial stucco products require expansion joints or control joints no greater than 12 feet wide and 12 feet tall. So it's a 12 by 12 square. You can go less than that, but you're not supposed to go more than that. And at the Zitoun's house, there were very, very few control joints. And because of that, there were both horizontal and vertical cracking and diagonal cracking going through the artificial stucco all around the house. And every time you have a crack, you have a place for water to enter into the wall cavity. In some places, I actually took a picture of the bottom side of the artificial stucco, and you could see the sheathing material had turned brown and was expanding. It was blowing up because it had been wet.
Okay, and I think you talked about it. Is there one single water heater? By the way, before I get to that, is this real stucco or artificial stucco?
Well, it appears to me to be artificial stucco.
So if it was represented to be stucco, that would not be true. Is that your opinion?
That's my opinion.
So an artificial stucco, is that just a cheap version that might look similar to stucco?
Yes, it is.
Is there one single water heater in this house? Just one solo water heater?
That's all I could find.
And is that, in your opinion, is that sufficient to heat a house of this size?
It's not just my opinion that it's not, but it is my opinion that it isn't enough based on the experience that I've had. But typically, a mechanical engineer will calculate how many water heaters you should have, where they should be placed, and how they should be installed. But in this day and age of the internet, you can go to the individual water heater manufacturer's website, and they will allow you to insert how many fixtures there are that require hot water into their computer program, and then they will calculate for you how many heaters you need, what size heaters you need. And I did that for this house and found that you need at least 2 heaters of that same size to be able to adequately supply hot water to the various fixtures.
Thank you. Rob, would you put up plaintiff's exhibit 90, please? And I'd like you to go to page 1378.
Guys, I have to take that 1:30 break. So I don't know how you all want to do this. I'm going to have to leave this Zoom. I don't know how to let you know I'm done.
Chaz, do you want us to give our cell phone numbers and your court coordinator can text
Yeah,
us?
well, why don't you just, if you, or actually, why don't you call Rhonda, Julie, and Joe or Jonathan? You guys go ahead and call Rhonda and let her know that your cell